Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Episcopal Charities semi-weekly Zoom call. This is our 11th call. We're doing these now every other week to keep you up to date on everything that's going on in the diocese and how our programs are responding to client needs during the pandemic. Once again, you know my voice and face. I'm Peter Keller, head of the EC board. And I'm, again, thank you for joining us today. And we've got Patrick Bergquist and SK Doyle on also. As I'm sure all of you are aware, 3 counties in the diocese, New York, which is, of course, Manhattan, Bronx, and Staten Island, are now in phase 2 of reopening, while the remaining 7 counties, Westchester and on up north of Hudson, have moved to phase 3. This is good news for all of us who have cabin fever, but, you know, I think we're all seeing many, many troubling signs. Yesterday was the 3rd highest daily toll since the pandemic started. This winter, there were more than 35,000 new cases across the U.S. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of it in the South and in the West. New York has announced today, and I think Connecticut, New Jersey have joined, that they're going to begin asking certain out-of-state residents, particularly like Florida and Arizona, to quarantine for 2 weeks when they come into the state. The New York City Marathon announced earlier today that they're canceling this year's marathon, and of course the marathon's not till November, so that gives you a sense of concern about what's going to happen in the fall. So, you know, we all hope that we can avoid another spike, but you know, the stuff we're seeing, particularly in the South and in the West, is really troubling. Seeing the images of the president in Arizona yesterday, it's mind-boggling, the high density of people, mostly maskless. As we move forward, you know, Patrick and SK remain in very close contact with all of our programs, but particularly given that we're in the last week of June now, they're talking with our summer children's programs to help them adjust practices to make sure that they can open in a safe manner. You know, we're really excited to report that all but 2 of our programs plan to operate this summer, which is really incredible news for the children those programs serve. You know, as most of you out there know, we serve very much an at-risk population, the working poor, the undocumented, and they already have huge educational issues because of the quality of schools in certain under-resourced districts. And over the last few weeks, we've seen a number of reports about the negative impact of remote or virtual learning on students really across the spectrum from kindergarten through 12th grade. Kids just aren't as engaged, they aren't as focused, they clearly aren't as motivated. And is so often is the case. People with the fewer resources bear the brunt of this crisis. The Times reported last week on a study that showed that students living in poverty are much more likely to have to share devices than their wealthier peers. So if you've got a school that's gone to virtual, which our school district did here back in March, or if you've got after-school activities that are being held virtually, you might have multiple kids having to share a device, which obviously limits the amount of time they can access some of the online activities. Obviously, in many other of the communities that we serve, this challenge is further heightened by just limited access to broadband. There were a number of service providers who, at the outset of the pandemic, offered free or reduced cost broadband. A lot of that access is ending now or being limited. So this NWEA report that I just mentioned estimates that the average student will enter the year next year, the school year, assuming we open in the fall, 1/3 of a year behind the expected benchmark for reading and up to 50% behind where they ought to be in math. Of course, that assumes we open in the fall, and right now, as I mentioned with the marathon, it's certainly not a given that schools will open in September as they usually do. And children who are at risk of falling behind under normal circumstances face even larger learning gaps. And this, again, really highlights how important summer programs that we support are and why we're so happy that most of our programs will be operating. You know, you can see how critical our programs are, in addition to the academic assistance, which, you know, is really important. These programs offer really important emotional stability for kids who are dealing with all of the impacts of the pandemic. You know, they've spent months in social isolation. In many cases, their families are experiencing either income loss, job loss, health issues. And so we think many of the students we serve are going to even have a greater need for social educational and emotional support this summer. Today, Patrick is going to share some stories about how our summer programs are working through the challenges of the COVID pandemic, how they plan to support their students, whether it's in person, or virtually, or in some cases, a hybrid approach. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to respond to those at the end of the session. So if something comes to mind, type your question in the Q&A area. And with that, let me turn it over to Patrick for some updates from the field. Thanks, Patrick.
Thanks so much, Peter. It's been one of the more exciting things in this particular role is to see the ways in which our programs are adapting. And then they have to keep adapting and then adapt again and then adapt again. I was speaking with one program director who's running a summer program here in the city, and they've gone through about 4 different iterations of their plan for summer camp, whether it's in person, then all in line, then it was going to be a hybrid. And so it's going back and forth. And what's so impressive to me about this is the level of commitment they have to the kids that they're serving in their neighborhoods. We know that kids are going to be lagging behind in really significant ways because of the pandemic. We know that the social disparities are incredibly magnified, especially in the lives of kids. So for a lot of our summer education programs, they're really focusing in on academic support. And even in the best of times, these summer programs build a bridge so there's not nearly as much loss from the time they finish one grade and the time they start the next grade. So when we're in a pandemic state, when the last time they physically saw their teachers was in March, when the schools were closed down, and now they may be going back at the end of the summer here, but we don't know that. So as we were talking to our program leaders, we began finding out some information. One is the technology that a lot of families had was a cell phone. So the number of kids, there could be 3 or 4 kids in a household, all trying to go to school on a cell phone. They're not sitting at a laptop, not sitting at with an iPad, those kinds of things. We're finding out that with broadband now being charged in many communities, kids just can't participate in so many of these things. So here's ways in which Episcopal Charities is responding and ways in which our programs are responding to these kids. First off, we're getting technology pieces. We're being able to get donations of iPads and get them to programs. We're helping provide some funding for people to get hotspots. We're making connections to suppliers for these things so that we can actually get something more than just a cell phone into these programs. The other thing that was really important to us when we were talking to different programs, we wanted to make sure our summer education programs felt different than going to school online. And one of the ways in which so many of our programs are doing this is, for instance, some programs on Monday, their counselors drop off a bag at each house. And in that bag are the books they're going to read that week, craft materials, game materials, physical things that they can touch, that they can use, and that is theirs. And so when they get on a Zoom conversation, everyone has their notebook. Everyone has the book. So there's a leveling of the playing field that's being created. I was talking to one program, and they're going to have a pet hamster that's going to bounce between kids' places. And you just don't know where the hamster is going to be on any given day until the hamster pops up in a Zoom. And so what's been amazing is to see the level of excitement that so many of our program leaders are having. When we first began talking about having to move so many programs into a virtual context, there was just so much fear. How do we do this? Can we do this? I don't think we can do this. But then for a lot of our programs, that fear has turned into a great wealth of creativity and excitement around all of this. And that's what's been really exciting to see. We're able to see some of our programs, for instance, up in the Mid-Hudson, it's a music program. Now, how do you do a music camp online. Well, so they've been working with technology, they've got small groups going in, all of these things. But now they've come to us and they said, Patrick, we think we can expand. We don't have to just talk to and be with kids in our area. So what this is allowing for some of our programs is actually to grow and to have a greater impact across. So these are some exciting things. We have a program, I just got an update yesterday. It was a traditional program that they do, summer camp program, education program. They can't do a lot of things together. And so they got a bunch of keyboards and they have piano teachers coming in because kids can sit at different places in the room with their keyboard, but they're still doing something together. They're still having some kind of social interaction, even though it's not playing games and stuff like that, they're still able to do something. So these are just a few examples of the kinds of things that our programs are doing. Most of our programs are doing a hybrid approach to this. So they're doing a lot of their programming is going to be virtual. But then I think on Tuesdays in the Bronx, it's sprinkler day on the front lawn of the church. There's different ways in which they're trying to practice social distancing, but giving kids a chance to be kids and not seated at a table all day long. So Peter, those are just a few stories of how our programs are responding and how Episcopal Charities is trying to respond to those needs.
Great, Patrick. Thanks for sharing. I mean, I've said this almost every time I talk to you or you host one of the program director calls. It's so amazing to see the imagination and the ingenuity of our program directors as they adapt and continue to just meet the needs of the kids. I have to admit, I kind of shuddered when you told the hamster story because it brought back memories of my now 27-year-old son when he was 7 or 8 and brought a hamster home for the weekend. Our cat damn near killed a hamster, but fortunately the hamster survived, but they did the same thing. They rotated a hamster among a whole bunch of like second graders or something, which is a real act of faith, knowing how.
Well, we'll see if the hamster survives.
That's exactly it. But you know, Patrick's stories just again show how important our programs are, and you know, we continue to work hand in hand with all of the outreach leaders to make sure that the vital programs that we fund are there to serve the communities. Because of course, you know, as you all know, the needs are even greater now. We continue to focus on the needs related to the pandemic, and we know that just because we're starting to reopen does not mean this is ending anytime soon. You know, we continue to encourage any of our programs to look through the year and to identify needs through the year. We continue to have an emergency funding committee that meets every Friday to receive and review applications for emergency grants, and I think almost 30 grants totaling almost $250,000. We continue to encourage people, whether it's to support a different sort of operation, whether it's to support greater use of the programs, let us know how we can help. You know, we thank the many who've contributed to our relief fund. And again, we're always open for additional donations because these needs are going to continue for a while. And we want to be able to respond to those needs. I've mentioned this every week. We continue to look for programs. Given the intensity of the last couple of months, you know, some programs have got volunteer burnout. And so if you would like to contribute time and energy, I think you would find it's incredibly rewarding and incredibly inspiring. And at a time when so many of us feel kind of helpless in the midst of this crisis, it helps you demonstrate your solidarity with all the people that our programs serve. So again, look on our website and you can see opportunities to donate money or your time. We continue to need masks and PPE for our program. So if you've got sewing capabilities, let us know. We'll make sure that any masks donated get out to programs that need them. Again, our website is www.ec-ny.org, and you'll see a big drop-down COVID menu. You know, we just grateful for all of your continued interest and support to EC and to our programs in this crisis. And we're happy to answer any questions. You can just enter them in the chat, and SK will let us know, you know, how we can give you more information. Again, before I turn it over to SK, I just want to remind you that we're doing these calls now every other week. Our next call will take place on Wednesday, July 8th. So I hope you all have a great 4th of July holiday weekend and stay healthy and stay safe. So SK, any questions?
I'm not seeing any questions yet. The chat function or the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen will work if you have a question. And if not, we can just give you back your afternoon.
Patrick, maybe just give them a quick shout out on the fresh food.
Yeah, so I literally was trying to wrap up calls and get details taken care of in the last half an hour. I was like, I got to get this right now. We have pallets of fresh produce going to a couple of our programs every week now. So one program is getting 170 like massive bags of vegetables for their 170 people they see every week. What this does is it means that this program doesn't have to spend a ton of money on produce, which is so expensive right now. And the produce that they were able to give out before this happened was like 4 apples and a thing of lettuce. And it was pretty minimal. But right now, because of the partnerships we've been able to develop, they're getting a giant sack of potatoes, all of this stuff. And we're able to do it through a partnership that we have. Literally just all came together in the last half hour.
So tune in every week and you'll hear more great stories, more inspiration. Until then, stay safe and enjoy your.
I do see one question on Facebook.
Oops.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Peter.
You
There's one question that was on the Facebook stream about summer program families and kids that could also be experiencing other needs, who are experiencing food insecurity and may need medical care and those kinds of things. So this person asks about the possibility of creating referrals for families to get other needed services.
Yeah, so all of our programs, this is an issue of referrals that happens every year. It's just that this is happening more this year. And so most of our programs have relationships because they're so connected to their communities. They know and they are known in their communities. But if there are programs out there that are struggling with how to refer people, give us a call. We have, we don't exactly have a Rolodex, but the equivalent of that. And so thanks for that question, because again, I've been on calls with our program directors who have been in tears with me, they're talking to a student, but hearing in the background parents arguing about not having enough food to eat. So these are real pressures that these kids are going through. Excellent. Thanks.
Get back to a nice summer day and stay safe, and we'll talk in 2 weeks. Thanks very much.
Great. Peace, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.